Today I'm going to break the talk down into kind of three parts. It's to why open access, how I do open access, and then what benefit. And I was saying to Suzanne yesterday, it was like a godsend. I had two people get in touch with me that both fitted into this kind of the last bit here that I'm going to include today. And it's almost as if the god of academia had kind of like gone, I'm going to give him some evidence that he can prove his point in terms of this. Before I start though, there's some caveats, and I always think that there's some caveats that we need to kind of say. So the first of it is that I know that different disciplines have different ways, and different research interests have different constraints and so on. So the thing that I'm going to be talking about today fits my kind of research and the kind of my research field, but I know it's not going to go across everywhere. I know it's not going to kind of be applicable to everyone, but hopefully there's something in there that you can kind of think about and take, irrespective of what discipline you're in. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach. I'm also going to be honest as well. So I kind of, violence seems to be a theme that's going to come through this. Is that I seem to constantly encounter kind of what I use like traditional academics who are resistant to anything that's probably new or innovative since maybe 1950. So anything that's been introduced since 1950 probably is something that they're going to be resistant towards. So I know as well that like kind of open access is going to be something which people are not some of my peers and some of my colleagues are not keen on. I also know that some of my stuff is anecdotal, so I can only say what I feel. I haven't got empirical evidence to prove that because I did this at one stage that someone else down the line 2 or 3 years later did something else in return and so on. And I also think that we shouldn't do open access cynically. So I think that we shouldn't just do open access because the ref tells us to, or because the Research Council tells us to. Actually, it's kind of like, it's something that you should either buy into, or you should kind of, I feel as though we should put our cards on the table. And for me, this is something that I was doing prior to RC UK talking about this, or prior to like sort of the ref kind of talking about stuff being open access. So so it's like, I don't think we should just do it cynically. And also I want to kind of take open access to its broadest understanding. So hopefully today I'm going to be talking a much more wider kind of field. So not just about journal articles, but around open access of kind of pretty much everything that we do as academics, which again, can be resisted by the traditional. So why open access for me? So I guess because I hadn't really thought about this until I was asked to do this talk, and so I guess the first thing was that so I very much bought into social media, this kind of share everything mentality. I don't really have a problem with people sharing, their personal lives online. I don't have a problem with them sharing their professional lives online. And for me, it just seemed to me that if I'm doing this research, if I'm getting involved in all these activities, if I'm doing stuff that there's an audience out there that wants to listen or wants to engage or wants to hear what I'm doing, then actually, why would I not want to share that? So I very much bought into the kind of social media kind of mindset, that kind of idea that we should share everything. I also have this kind of real dislike for this kind of hierarchies and exclusivity, and of course academia is probably the worst place for me to ever work in terms of this, this idea that you actually, like that we only kind of like, that we should only write for our peers, that we should only share with, and not only just our peers, but only certain types of peers, because of course there's hierarchies within our peers and colleagues and so on, so I have this real kind of distaste for this. So I have like this kind of idea that I think that open access makes stuff much more democratic, and I think it makes things much more inclusive as well. It kind of strips away a lot of those kind of hierarchies. Why should you have to pay to be able to read an article? I don't really understand that. Why should you be able to read an article if you're on campus and you're using the university computer, but when you go home you have to pay £30 to be able to access that research? I don't really get that. So actually making that much more, makes it much more inclusive, because actually by stripping away those kind of the paywalls and so on, you're allowing your work to be engaged and seen by a lot more people. I think that there's an issue of scrutiny and accountability as well. And I'll come on to what my actual research is about in a moment. And one of the things for me is that the research I do brings about a lot of questions. People ask a lot of questions. People want to contest it, the people want to challenge it. And also as well, I find a lot of the times that people want to actually tell me that I said something that I didn't, or I wrote something that I didn't, or my view is this, or I'm endorsing something that I didn't. And an example is David Aranovich a few years ago in the Sunday Times. He wrote a piece saying that after the Paris attacks at the Bataclan and the Stade de France, he wrote a piece to say that, well, basically to infer that me and 3 other academics were encouraging students on campuses to actually resist government policies and actually encouraging spaces where people could be extremists and kind of extremist ideologies can exist. Now, one of the things that I could go back with that was on the back of a paper that he attended a conference at SOAS at the University of London, and this was 2 months before the Bataclan attack. And actually, I could go back because I had a recording of that, because I'd put that on my website, because I'd made that freely available. I could go back and actually prove that in no way did I endorse that whatsoever. I may have challenged government policy, but there was nothing around me actually ever inferring that anybody could, should be spaces created. So this scrutiny and accountability, I think is good. I think it holds us accountable. I really like that idea that reviewers have to put their names to it, because I was thinking myself, like, actually, would I be as harsh if I had to put my name to it? And I'd probably, and it's that thing. It's like, if you could put your name to something, you're probably a little bit more balanced in terms of that. So I think that, in terms of that's good as well. I also come from a practitioner background, so between completing my PhD and coming back here as a lecturer, I spent 3 years working for a community organisation, and one of the things that they did was I was director of research and policy for them, and one of their big ideas was don't leave it on the shelf. What is the point of doing research or doing some work if you're just going to write a report and it gets left on the shelf? If no one reads it, then it's a waste of time actually doing it. And because funding was so tight in terms of the community group and the community organisation, it was very much about whatever you do, make sure that it's got an impact, make sure that you actually got something, it's got a reason, or it's got a meaning, or it's got an audience, or it's got something you can actually start a conversation. And then finally, why even do research? So these were just like my ideas. It was like a kind of, a stream of consciousness which was coming out, and it was just like, well, why do we actually do research? Because surely, especially if you're in the social sciences, if you're doing this social science research and you're working with humans and you're working with real people in a contemporary setting about the problems in society, then why would you not want to share your research? Because surely one of the things you're doing if you're researching social problems is that you're beginning to try and change those social problems. So you're trying to make them better, you're trying to find a way forward, you're trying to, whether it's working with government, whether it's working with communities, you're actually trying to bring about some sort of change. And I use change, I realise that we bring about change, most of us, in a very, very small way, in a very tiny, microscopic way. But even so, that bringing about that change is really important. So for me, it was like, why do research if I'm not going to share this? And putting stuff behind firewalls and so on, is not a way of being able to share this. And so my research, if you're not aware, is into Islamophobia and the problematization of Muslim communities. And I've been doing this for just under 20 years. And if you think about this, my research has kind of run from kind of just before 9/11 through to the kind of contemporary setting. And if you're looking at kind of the problematization of Muslims, Muslim communities in Britain, you've got a whole raft of different issues and kind of, contexts and, socio-political, socio-cultural things, which have actually shaped and influenced, and something will occur that can actually change the whole landscape in terms of the way in which my research is kind of understood and the groups I'm working with. And I'm saying at the start, is that I actually started doing my postgrad research 10 days before 9/11. And the fact that 9/11 happened that quick after I started my research really has changed, but my career, my research focus and so on, and these events continue to do so, and pretty much at a rate of knots in terms of that. And so, so my research is politically, socially, and culturally relevant. I mean, it's contentious and it's controversial. Sometimes, if you're being called onto the media, like with the Manchester attack, you've got a lot of people which have been, you've got hideous atrocity which has occurred. You've got, young people, young kids being killed. This is a very sensitive time to be able to kind of talk about issues and be able to try and, kind of share your research around the way in which kind of these things create backlashes. So you will have something like the Manchester attack, and then what we have is a backlash against ordinary Muslims. And one of the things is about kind of raising awareness of this to try and bring about kind of like an awareness to kind of stop, the kind of spikes in hate crimes that we see. So it has so it is contentious, it is controversial, in the same way that when I'm working with government or working with counter-terror unit in the West Midlands, for example, around the issue of preventing violent extremism. The fact that we all buy into the fact that, we don't want someone to, kind of set off a bomb in Birmingham and kill people, that's the start point. How we kind of move forward from there is, becomes very difficult because people have different ideas around it. So again, it can be contentious, it can be controversial. And it also has the potential to divide opinion, but also to garner hate, both towards me and towards the communities that I'm working with. And for that, there's this kind of thing, and I think that, there's a responsibility to be objective and informed and clear and honest, which is kind of what we would expect in a kind of academic sense, but also, it's not just for you, but also for those you are researching and engaging with, and also those you're looking to communicate with. And when I'm trying to get the victims of, say, Islamophobic hate crimes, so a few years ago I did some research with Muslim women who wear the face veil, and actually getting them to talk about their experiences of hate crime. You have to build a lot of trust in terms of that. A white British man going in and talking to Muslim women who are wearing a face veil, who actually have been spat upon in the street, have been, excuse me, have been verbally abused, have had cars driven at them. All of those kind of things, being able to kind of build the trust and kind of the right environment where you can have those conversations is something that takes a bit of time. And actually, for me, I have a responsibility to those as well. If they're sharing me the most personal and the most sensitive of experiences, then actually I've got a responsibility as well in terms of the way in which I communicate that and the way in which the platform that I get as an academic also gives me a chance to actually advocate, for them as well in terms of victims of hate crime. So, that notion of responsibility becomes something which is like sort of, very key for me. So, how do I go about doing open access? Well, I guess the first point is the very easy one, is that, I make a choice to publish in open access journals, and it was interesting because I had a quick look to make sure they were all DOAS registered, because I couldn't be 100% sure, and so I had a quick look and they are all DOAS registered, so fingers crossed. And one of the things that I found with this is again there's a little bit of snobbery comes in, and so so what I've kind of got now is that I publish something in those open access journals. But then I'll publish something, which is, I use the same findings, but present them in a different way, with a different angle. So maybe looking at kind of notions of victimhood and then maybe notions of, sort of impact on belonging, and publish those in two different journals. So I publish in one open access journal, but then I'll publish in one non-open access journal. And that purely is because it tends to then sit much more nicely with some of my colleagues who are in managerial positions who want to look and try and make sure that I balance that stuff out. I'm being totally honest, I have no need to kind of pull any punches, I'm being honest. So this kind of stuff, this is what I do, so this is what I try and do now. But I try and do that because, people do want to read it. The people that you're engaging, your communities that you're engaging with, you're working with, they want to be able to read it. And I don't think I can't go back to them and go, well, okay, so thanks for that. We didn't pay you for that stuff, and you shared all of your most, the most sensitive experience that you've ever had. But if you go online and pay £35, you can read that for a week, or maybe you maybe can download it for a month or something. I just, for me, it doesn't sit, it doesn't sit well. And so, so using these journals, using these open access journals, allows me to be able to kind of, position that stuff a little bit more, kind of more widely in terms of that. So once I've published in those journals, I share them on Twitter and Facebook and on my website, and I make sure that they go out there. I make sure that people know that they're open access. I make sure that people can see that they're free. And I always put in there, these are available free, so that people can go to those straight away. I let others know about it, so I write a lot of comment pieces for the Huffington Post, for New Statesman, for The Guardian, comment is free. I write a lot of these, and what I try and do is when I'm writing this, I include links to my open access journal articles so that people can, when they're reading that, and they may go, okay, that 800 words is enough, I don't want to read no more. They may actually go, actually, I wouldn't mind reading a little bit more. So I can put a link in there and say, this draws upon my research, which I did last year or so on. And so what you can do is you can then link that back. So people that are reading something free, in terms of the Huffington Post, can then, if they want, go on and access an open access journal article as well, and then find that from there. And then I look for opportunities, and I'll come on to this in a moment. I always think one good thing I think I'm good at opportunity spotting. I'm good at this, in terms of opportunities. And then I kind of the other thing I've tried to do this year is I do this new thing. I'm trying to encourage my colleagues to share anything that they've got open access on a Friday with the hashtag #FreeReadFriday. I would love to say it's one of the most successful things I've ever done, but it's clearly not. And when I looked on the hashtag, I found there was about 3 people doing it. So, these things sometimes take a bit of time. So this is what I do. So today's Free Read Friday, exploring the impacts of Islamophobia on visible Muslim women victims, a British case study. And so this was an open access journal article that I was able to publish onto my website. So I put it on there, and so I make that available. So, and one of the things that I kind of that come out of that is that I get some nice feedback. I get people going, I mean, even a thank you. I think if someone takes the time to say thank you, then that's quite nice. I'm not trying to change the world, in any great way. But actually, if someone's reading that and accessing that, and of course, the great thing about it is that at the end of the day, you can go back onto this and you can see how many times it's been downloaded, you can see how many times it's been viewed, and actually, you see that there's a spike. So the value of this for me is great because, I'm writing this stuff, I'm researching this stuff, I'm putting it out there, and then what I'm doing is I'm raising awareness. And so every Friday, I tweet again with a different article. Sometimes it's because I haven't got 52 weeks in a year, it's like you kind of run out of free articles. So one of the things is sometimes I'll do like an extended piece that's a kind of blog article or a comment piece or a periodical article or so on. But most of the time it's built around those kind of open access journal pieces. So some of the journals that I've published in, Sage Open, passing the dinner table test, which was about policy approaches to tackling Islamophobia in Britain. So it's very government focused, very much about the policy process. And then in societies, a case study analysing claims of Islamophobia in the context of the proposed super mosque in Dudley. I'm sure most of you know, but Dudley is about 5 or 6 miles away from here, just in the Black Country, just outside Birmingham. It's had a whole issue around the mosque being built for 20 years. It's 20 years this year, the anniversary of the mosque proposed being built. There's not one brick laid yet, and yet it's attracted, the British National Party have been voted in there, it's attracted the largest march by the EDL, a Conservative candidate at the 2015 general election had to stand down on the back of it. So it's like, it's one of these, it's the super mosque that doesn't exist. And so it's really interesting in kind of understanding this. Now, one of the things was when I published this, so this was on 24th of April 2013, about a month and a half later, there was a series of attacks on mosques in the Black Country. And that was really interesting because I had written in this piece that the notion of the super mosque in Dudley was seeing a kind of spilling out of kind of hate crimes being perpetrated against mosques in the area. And there'd been like sort of 5 arson attacks on mosques in the Black Country in that period of time. And then what we had was, in the space of a week, we had like these kind of attacks. We had the kind of 3 nail bomb attacks on the mosques in the Black Country, plus also the murder of Mohammed Salim in Birmingham. And one of the things that I was able to do with this was actually then kind of approach different outlets and say, I've done some research in the Black Country. Can I write something for you about this to kind of give you a kind of informed insight? So New Statesman was one, The Conversation was another, being able to write about this, but then also being able to link that directly to that kind of free, that open access journal article. And one of the things that I did a few years ago was I traced back from the tweet through the journal article right the way back, and you could see that actually, so from the tweet it was kind of this many people accessed it, and then it kind of came down, but you can still see that at the end of it, the open access journal article, the amount of people that had downloaded it and viewed it in the space of a week had gone up. It was outstripped anything that had gone before. So it really does, for me, it has a real value in terms of that, because you can actually begin that conversation. You can share your stuff. You can say to people that, look, actually, yes, this is a really terrible issue that's going on. Mosques are being burnt down. Mosques are being attacked. There are nail bombs being left outside the mosques. But actually, we're trying to kind of show that we are trying to understand this. We're working with the police, we're working with the city councils, we're working with national government, plus also we've got a really good understanding of the research environment in which we're doing this. So, in terms of that sort of open access, you see, for me, I want to go further than that. I want to go further than just the journal articles. I want to kind of take this notion of open access even further. So what I do is this is my website, www.drchrisallen.uk, and on there I put as much of my kind of output as I possibly can. So I put all my talks and public lectures. I get those recorded. I have them filmed, or I have them recorded. So I'm doing that now. So that'll be on there, by the end of today. I put all my media work on there. So I do a lot of media work. I put my interviews with Radio 4. I put my interviews with Al Jazeera. I put my interviews with local radio, BBC Radio WM. I've even done interviews for Heart FM, which I feel as though, that's scraping the barrel probably, but it's a different audience, it's a different audience, and actually sometimes, if you've got something, there are a lot of people that you kind of don't want to be talking about these issues in a kind of sensitive, heightened time, and so I think to myself, actually, if I can try and contribute something which is informed, then actually I should take that opportunity, Heart FM or not. Comment pieces and blog posts, policy documents and briefings, and I put all of those on there. I put everything on there. I put it on my website. I literally make everything open to, open access. And just before I came to this event, I went to an event about women in Parliament, and one of the interesting things was someone had come up from Parliament and was talking to their students, and they were talking about kind of select committees and APPGs, all party parliamentary groups. And they were going, which one should we look at? And the great thing was the Commission on Citizenship and Civic Engagement, I had submitted some evidence to them a month ago. And on Friday, they had told me that it had been accepted and published online. And it was great to be able to have that kind of real life example to show students as well that actually this is what we're doing. And so that was available, that's available on my website, but it's also available on there. So, so linking this stuff up is really useful for me in terms of this. So that's what the website looks like. It's the smallest kind of screenshot you've ever going to see. So I'm sorry for those of you at the back, because I was sitting there and I wouldn't be able to see that. But that's what it looks like. And then, just to kind of to give you an insight, this was my talk that I did at the university's research conference in September. So I got that on there. That was about post-Brexit fears among secondary migrant Somali families in Birmingham. I get I put events out, so I do a lot of public engagement. I've been fortunate enough to be funded for 3 years by the College of Social Sciences to do a public and civic engagement programme around Birmingham's Muslim communities. And this was the event that we had on the 11th of October that I was kind of registering, trying to get people to attend. I also put out through that this was, I was speaking at a conference in Vienna last week. And one of the things I did was I wrote my paper beforehand and I made that available, so I put that online so that people could have that, because I knew I wouldn't be able to record the paper once I was there. And then from the event, the Missing Muslims event, what I did was I wrote up a briefing paper, like it's just like 3 sides of A4, a briefing paper, which I again make available, so that for people that weren't there at the event, they can read what we spoke about. But also those who were there can see that actually what I've done is I've taken those conversations, the discussions that we've had, and I've now made that into a kind of policy briefing which sets out where I'm going to try and take that. So I can then put that into my project, my 3-year project now, and kind of put that together. So for me, this idea of kind of open access on its broadest really kind of puts gives an issue of accountability. So it keeps me accountable to the people that I'm engaging. The research I did for the Somali families, everybody was recruited via social media in terms of that. We put out a call, we found out about this kind of issue, we put out a call for participants, we had Somali families getting in touch with us, and from there we snowballed out our research, and we was able to do that research within the space of 2 months. And these are communities in Birmingham which are seen to be, like hard to reach in terms of that. So it really is fantastic in terms of me. And then of course I also put when I have journal articles that are not open access and you have to pay. Notice I don't put my free new article, I just put my new article. So in terms of that as well. So what benefit of open access to me? And as I say, a lot of this is anecdotal. I can't say to you that look, because I put something in there 10 years ago that this is where I am now. But those things for me, it's about it engages communities of interest. So Muslim communities are hugely supportive of the work that I do. Hugely supportive. Muslim communities in Birmingham, amazingly supportive. Of the research that we're doing. They don't always agree, and that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But what they see is that actually we're trying to do something. That me, my research assistant, the little team that we've got working on the Birmingham Muslims project, for example, we're trying to do something which is trying to bring about change, not just for Muslim communities, but for everyone in the city. We're looking at the problems of society and the problems in Birmingham, social problems in Birmingham, through the lens of Muslim communities, which hopefully for the better of all. And a lot of this is, like I say, research participants. We recruit research participants through this way. We put out, a call. We speak to people. We engage with people. But then we can share back with them as well. We can respond back. We can kind of, let them see what they're engaged in, what their contribution, what their time they've given us has actually come to sort of bring about. We engage policymakers, I can engage politicians, I can engage peers, all of this stuff being able to kind of just send, like a journal article that I've published and send, Saul Becker, who used to be the head of the College of Social Sciences here, said to me, every time you publish a journal article, you should identify 5 people that you want to read it. And actually, open access makes that so much easier because, actually, if you just send a link to someone in an email, if it's a politician, they're probably going to, hit that paywall again. And when it comes to it, and it's like £35, the politician ain't going to read it. Whereas open access again, you've got everything there, and they can just access that straight away. And it's just for me, it's just perfect in terms of being able to hit the people that I want to. In terms of communities of interest, it allows them to, it allows those communities of interest to come back to me. This is an event which is on Wednesday, the 29th of November. I'm not sure if any of you remember, but earlier this year, there was a guy who drove from Cardiff in a van, and he drove to the Finsbury Park Mosque in London, and he drove into the crowd of worshippers that has come out of Finsbury Park Mosque. Well, this is an event that's being held at Finsbury Park Mosque, and they wanted me to be a part of this to talk about the way in which we engage, Islamophobic hate crimes. So that again is something that's kind of come about from the fact that, I was one of those who responded. I had a kind of view around it. I had, an idea around what we should be doing in terms of trying to tackle hate crime, and that invitation came directly back on that. And then this is what I received yesterday. So this is, I won't say names because they're recorded, so it's a little bit unfair. But a friend of mine who works in Parliament, he messaged me last night on WhatsApp, and he sent me these 2 links, and he said, by the way, for your intention, one of the Lord's offices will be in touch with you to discuss this. And so when I clicked on it, what it was that it's about the definition of Islamophobia. So one of the things I've been campaigning for many years is the adoption of a formal definition of Islamophobia by the British government in terms of giving it formal recognition. Because actually, you know, in the same way that anti-Semitism, you know, sexism, you know, disablism, racism needs formal recognition, so does Islamophobia, in my opinion. And so one of the things was that this was raised last week, and in response to something that I had done, I mean, you can't really see this, but this was earlier in the year, I wrote a briefing paper called Towards a Working Definition of Islamophobia on the back of the Commission on Islam Participation and Public Life report. And I wrote this briefing paper, sent it to Theresa May. She didn't really read it. And she did send me a very brief letter back, you know. Well, she didn't read it. But yeah, but he had picked up the fact that he knew that I was keen to work on this, and he sent me this to say that actually he's put me now forward to this, and so that's great. So by me making that open access, by me putting that stuff out, and this in itself, as a briefing paper, draws back to my kind of research, which has kind of been published in open access journals. And then, what benefit of open access? I'm not sure how much longer I've got, but I'll wrap up pretty soon. It builds constituencies' goodwill. What we saw there from that kind of that WhatsApp message is that these are individual people that are getting in touch with me, or organisations that are getting in touch with me out of goodwill, out of their own, you know, I'm sitting in my car driving home, listening to TalkSport, listening to you know analysis of football matches, and I've got people actually out there when they get these opportunities saying, "Oh, you should speak to Chris Allen. You should do this. You know, Chris Allen's done this," or you know, sharing stuff. So it's fantastic for me, you know, because this open access approach of making everything available for people to use in whichever way they want, you know, to criticise, but primarily to kind of take and use in a positive way. It's fantastic, you know, because it opens up all of these opportunities. And so it's about, you know, I get invited to events and activities. I've got so many events I've been invited to in November that I can't actually go to all of them. And that is genuinely, you know, honest. I have recruitment and research participants, as we say, recommendations to the media, this kind of word of mouth. But really, it's this key. It's because you're giving as well. You know, you as academics, you know, sometimes I see my colleagues and I wonder what actually are you actually even motivated or passionate about the topics that you research? You know, because like, you know, what are you giving? You know, like, and I get that it's a job. I get that, you know, like, you know, all these things are, you know, that's fine. It's a job. But if you're dealing with something in the social sciences, which is about kind of like social issues, which is about the problems, which is about what's going on around you, you know, why would you not want to share and give something to try and, you know, empower others, to kind of give them material, give them resources, give them evidence to be able to take that. And that's where this goodwill process works. It's because it's two-way for me. It works both ways. It's that in what I can give to them, you know, they you know, the organisations, communities, individuals give back, you know, to me, and you know, and I think that's absolutely key. And this was really funny because this was back in I can't remember what that. So it was 2011. It was after the riots, and I did a really weird piece of research. I did an online survey with 50 Muslims in Birmingham, and I just set it up just because I was interested. It's not the best piece of research you've ever seen. And I just did this online survey about why was it that young Muslims weren't involved in the riots in 2011. Because actually it was really weird, because you had white, you had Afro-Caribbean, and you had mixed heritage, but you had very, very few young Muslims involved, you know, because we'd gone in and kind of looked. And so we did this piece of research, and it was an online survey, just got some data back, and in honesty, I just produced a kind of like a 10-page little document that I could send out to different Muslim organisations in the area, just to kind of show the kind of findings. Now, I never, in any way, it's never been published in a journal, it's never been published in any kind of way whatsoever. And yet, the BBC then got in touch with me and said that they had so many people forward this document onto them that actually they wanted to run a news story on it. And I was a little bit embarrassed because it's like, yeah, it's a little bit rubbish, it's not the best research, you know. But then I was like, oh, sod it, let's just go for it anyway, you know, like, so the BBC run this whole thing, BBC News, Birmingham Black Country, Muslims shown in positive light after Birmingham riots. That was published. Next thing, I was invited to do interviews on BBC Asian Network, BBC Radio WM, you know, and it was just purely, there was no, I would get, you know, I would bet that people would struggle to find the report that I did for this, because it was just literally a PDF that I sent out to a few organisations just to say, look, just in case raises a few interesting points. And yet it attracted like kind of the national media in terms of BBC News. And then last night, yesterday again, I mean, so yesterday 7:13, I blurred out the name of the organisation because I thought it was, you know, competition, you know what it's like. And it was just like, hi Chris, hope you're well. We have been asked by the OIC, the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, a bit like the UN for Muslim countries, to find a non-Muslim who has written on the subject of Islamophobia for a project to tackle the issue. If you're interested, can I get you in contact with them? Let me know. And so that's what I mean about the goodwill. You know, like this is, you know, this may turn into something, it may not. You know, I get a lot of these, you know, and sometimes they turn into something fantastic, sometimes they turn into something which is okay, and sometimes they never materialise into anything. But the fact that, you know, in one day, I'm getting this, you know, literally the day before, I do a presentation about what is the benefits of open access, is that I think that, you know, that this sort of stuff, you know, again, I can give them details, you know, and I've said there that, you know, you can direct them to my website, and I know that they can go on there and they can get 10 articles, so they can get 10 journal articles that they can download, they can read, they can map things over years, they can get briefing papers and so on. And so for me, that's what it's all about.